Hey, what's up guys, Sir Emanon here, back with another episode of Road to 1000 DuelingBook rating. So this time I'm going to be back on Dragon Link, and we're going to be playing against Altergeist for this episode. So just one quick announcement before we get started is that if you guys are still interested in participating in my online tournament on Discord, be sure to sign up before the deadline ends, which is, by the time you see this video, going to be in 3 days. So that's going to be on Friday, September the 25th. So yeah, be sure to get those in if you would like to by clicking on the link to the Discord in the description box down below. Just because I've been getting a couple of questions, be sure to just quickly read over the rules as well as follow just a simple one-step procedure to be able to chat in the server and access the tournament info and all that good stuff. Just because it makes everything kind of easier on my end, ensuring that people don't get too crazy. It's nothing too insane as far as the rules themselves are concerned. It's just be respectful is basically the gist of it. But that is pretty much all I have to say about that. So we are going to go ahead and hop into this gameplay here. I should preface this by saying that this is not the cleanest gameplay on my end, but I figure it's important to show even the games that would play relatively badly. I would say that this series played kind of bad overall. But I think it's pretty important to showcase situations where you play suboptimally or where you make mistakes, because I think the illusion of perfect gameplay is something that is pretty common for a lot of gameplay oriented YouTube channels for Yu-Gi-Oh, because people tend to either cherry pick replays or they don't really go over mistakes a lot, is kind of what I've found. So hopefully I can kind of bend the mold a bit. And kind of showcase that even in situations where you don't play well, you can still come out of it with a positive experience and mindset. So for the sake of learning, for both myself and for hopefully you guys, that is what we are going to be doing today. So our opening hand is not great, but it's enough to combo. We drew 3 one-ofs, so that's never really that good. But even though we don't have a broken starter, it still technically is enough to play. But unfortunately, we are going second, and our opponent's hand is very, very strong. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and he starts off with a Pot of Extravagance. And then I make a slightly questionable play in terms of ashing this, because the most popular deck in DuelingBook right now is Dino. And Dino plays this card. So my initial instinct should be that Extravagance is Dino, but I'm just so conditioned to think that Extravagance means Geist or Subterror or some other back row deck. So my initial instinct is just to always ash this card, but I think in a format where Dino is as popular as it is, such as this one, it's probably not correct to just knee-jerk drop it, because holding it for Miscellaneousaurus or Baby is generally going to be much better. So yeah, that's probably the first questionable play, I think. But it's not a huge one in this instance, because I obviously didn't get punished for it because he is playing Geist, but something to actually keep in mind. We're going to follow up with a Marionetter because opponent's hand is pretty strong even with the Extravagance ashed there. So the Haunted Rock is going to be the card of choice here, which is pretty interesting. I've always been back and forth with this card. I generally don't play it, but there was a deck profile that I posted on my channel a couple months ago where I did actually end up playing this card. But the majority of the time I just think that it is pretty bricky by nature. However, I do understand the appeal in terms of just getting immediate tempo in a hand that looks like this. I mentioned that Marionette plus Melisseek is the best case scenario for Haunted Rock, because it's where you have 2 normal summons that you want to get value out of but can't unless if you play this card. So yeah, our opponent is going to go ahead and trade off for Melisseek and then go search the Multi-Faker. But instead of going Hextia and then go Link Cross to get the search off Hextia, our opponent actually is playing a version with Dragoon. So they're going to actually go into Verte Anaconda instead. So this is obviously going to be very difficult for this mediocre hand on my part to deal with. Because, even though our opponent is on a hand that would theoretically empty itself, with a hand trap as well as a Faker that'll summon itself, Silk obviously would just bounce back the Faker. So it will be the pitch cost for Dragoon, if anything. So we draw, and we drew another one of, which is not that good. But in theory, my thought process here is, okay, we can activate Ravine, pitch either the Smoke Grenade or the Boot Sector, because these are both not really going to do a whole lot immediately. But probably more so the Smoke Grenade. and then try and fetch the Dragoon negation because this works in cards or effects. So like I'm hoping that that's going to get negated, and then we can go ahead and try and play my normal summoning Phalanx and then going from there. But our opponent does actually have the Ash for it, which is like one extra disruption that I did not account for. And then resolution, they're going to flip the spoofing and then grab the faker as well as the silk. And then here I realize, okay, the only play I have is Phalanx to normal summon, and if it gets bounced, I just lose. And even if it doesn't get bounced, like there's no way that I'm going to make it all the way to Romulus, have that resolve, and like keep going at this point. And I already like drew so many blanks, so this hand was just never going to get past that. So I decided to just scoop it up. So that's not the most questionable game. The questionable game comes with these two games, or these next two games. So I guess spoiler alert, it does go to game 3. But yeah, I decide actually to let my opponent go first and side in all the back row removal options that I have available. So I have like Cosmic and Lightning Storm and like all these cards. And the rationale is that the end board is fine against back row decks, especially if you're playing the Smoke Grenade combo. Because like ripping cards from back row decks is like really powerful, since they are much more reliant on each individual piece, because each card doesn't get as much mileage as like say a combo deck. But on the other hand, things like the Union Carrier Lock aren't as effective. Like against, I guess maybe against like a version of Geist that plays Dragoon, it could be a little bit better. But I figure that the end board won't be as much of a hindrance to like a back row deck. So I figured might as well just try and break the board, and maybe my opponent also could brick on like a bunch of go second cards, like maybe hand traps or cards like Forbidden Droplet or Dark Ruler, if they do decide to play cards like that. So I figured maybe it's better to actually just go second. And I still think that that is not a bad mindset just in general. But I want to know what you guys think, if you have any disagreements with that. So opponent is going to start up Marionetter and go again for the Haunted Rock. Here I would argue that like Marionetter plus Faker makes it so that maybe it's not as good to go for Haunted Rock in that instance. But there still is like cases where you can like do this kind of stuff where you like revive Faker, and then they're gonna go Faker for Meliseek, and then go for the double Hextia line where you go into Hextia and then search off the Meliseek for another Faker, and then turn these two into a second Hextia, which lets you grab a Protocol or Manifestation. Generally, people grab Manifestation off this, so that is what's going to happen here. And it's interesting that they chose not to set the droplet, because like you can droplet send something like a manifestation, just like have it as a free extra negate, because like the manifestation is going to resolve no matter what. Like see the interactions between manifestation and spoofing or manifestation and silk. So this thing is like always resolving, so it's just a free interaction with droplet. So just another negation. But yeah, they chose to just keep it in hand. So we draw its Quick Launch, which is a very good, very much needed card, because the rest of our hand is not amazing. We drew Violent Cube, so we always seem to draw like one brick, but I mean we play so many like not great cards to draw that it's bound to happen that we're gonna draw like, you know, those cards at some point. But they're gonna shotgun the manifestation in the standby phase, and then go for a Faker. When they activate Faker in hand, I chain Quick Launch just so that I make sure it resolves, because I don't want it to be negated by Hexia, because it's like it's one of the actual power plays that my hand currently has. So just like guaranteeing access to that is like access to Tracer is pretty important here. They go and activate Faker, and for some reason I chain Noctivision. This doesn't really make a lot of sense, because like it's better if I chain block for a Striker Dragon. Like it's kind of minor because most people don't hit Striker Dragon, but there are some players who insist on it. So like there's nothing to be gained here though by activating this Noctivision here, because like it doesn't do anything that activating it in response to Striker Dragon's effect wouldn't already do. But like that play is just strictly better because it does have the capacity to chain block. Yeah, there's not really too much rationale behind that. Like maybe you can make a case where it's like, oh, you know, Protocol, like if they want to use Protocol on Noctivision for some reason, like maybe it could be better off if they like tributed Silk after it used its effect before like Silk, instead of like before Silk hits the board. But that's like such a slim chance of anyone actually using Protocol on Noctivision. So Like that line doesn't really make sense. So this should have been in response to when I actually used Striker. Yeah, that is still a relatively minor point, but it is something that is worth mentioning. Yeah, so there is a potential double negation of spell and traps and a potential protocol here that he might have set, and the guaranteed silk bounce. So I know a lot of what I have to play through, but not everything. And I am assuming a hand trap. But yeah, so go ahead and make Striker. And yeah, this is where I should have used the Nocta Vision at that point. Not really any value into not really doing it there. Or yeah, there's like no really point. But anyways, we go ahead and grab our Brute Sector. And we go ahead and make our Romulus, and then we chain block here. Interestingly, our opponent chooses to not use Imperm, which I find to be interesting, because there are points where like hand trapping Romulus, like Ogre and Gamma, I would argue are better against this card in particular, but like sometimes stopping this card is actually just enough because that's their tuner access, and that's like a big portion of how you get to play the game and keep extending. Granted, my hand was the tactics was drawn off the Nocto, so my hand would have been 4 cards plus another card that I would have drawn. So like my opponent's probably thinking, well, there's gonna be 5 cards, and Brute Sector, so like it might be too risky to use an Imperm on Romulus, which I can get, but it would have actually hurt quite a bit. Like it wouldn't have been the end of my turn, but it would have hurt enough for me to like reevaluate my play if they opted to use the Imperm. So here we go for Divine Lance, and I'm trying to force Silk here, because my thought process is, okay, like if I equip the Divine Lance to the Romulus, and then they go and bounce Romulus, then I won't really get value off the Divine Lance, plus that gets rid of a body and the arrows. So I'm thinking, okay, that's probably the line that they're going to take. So I go ahead and activate it, but they let it go through, and they don't negate the Divine Lance with the Hextia, which is understandable. Like you'd rather just bounce it at that point if you're gonna stop it. But yeah, this is all resolving, so I'm just wondering like when my opponent is going to try and use the like his interrupts. So yeah, that's fine. Like the summon is fine. So we go ahead and go into Link Cross, and that's the one that gets hit with Imperm. So I've just noticed that a lot of people seem to be pretty adamant on stopping the Link Cross itself. Which I guess if I was going first, that would make a lot of sense. But here I'm going second, and all I'm trying to do is just navigate my way through a board. So like if you're not gonna stop Romulus, then that probably means that you're just gonna wait until there's something that threatens your board, right? Because I don't really see an instance where like it's kind of hard, right? Because like, you want to have like a consistent reasoning for like holding certain disruptions or using them. Maybe the line of thinking is that the resultant Marcher line goes in a Herald, which stops like the Imperm anyway, so might as well trade at this point. But I mean, you have like Silk to be able to stop a lot of this, so I don't know. It's pretty interesting. I really was convinced though that my opponent was going to Silk the Romulus on activation of Divine Lance. So if you guys would have done something different from the Geist player's perspective, let me know. And if you would have done something different on my end, given the way that my opponent chose to play, also be sure to let me know. Always curious to hear different lines of play. So at this point, I'm like, okay, a lot of things are resolving that I feel shouldn't be, so let's go ahead and just go into the battle phase. And then just try and hit over this multi-faker, because my opponent could just let the faker die and bounce the manifestation. But I wanted to see if there was if they would hold it for that point, or would bite, like take the bait. But my opponent doesn't bite. And now here I'm thinking, okay, so this is a good chance to use Cosmic Cyclone, right? Because like the goal was either to force the bounce or to be able to use Cosmic here. Because now my opponent is not incentivized to use Hextia to negate the Cosmic, because they weren't able to use the Silk yet, and that's the only card that they can send off, right? So here Cosmic I feel is the best opportunity to be dropped, just so that I don't have to deal with the background main phase 2. If he chooses to negate it, then I don't have to deal with Silk, which would mean that the back row would be very good, but that would take care of pretty much all the board except for essentially one disruption. So yeah, they chained the Imperm just because, and then now I'm like, okay, so it's like either a spell or trap negation or it's a bounce. It's one or the other and not both. So I'm thinking, okay, what's the best line of play here, right? Because again, I figured that the silk, if he's holding it for this long, he's probably going to wait until I get into like guard dragon plays. So I'm thinking, okay, which one of these cards do I want to ensure resolves in the face of a Hextia? Or is there a way for me to try and bait Silk earlier so that my Guard Dragon play resolves? I'm thinking that's probably not super likely. So I decided, okay, let's just go ahead and use Tactics Talent to try and steal. And because it doesn't target, my opponent is forced to respond to this in some way, shape, or form. So I'm like, either I get the disruption out of the Hextia, which gets rid of the Silk, or the Silk has to be chained, in which case they can't respond with Hextia. So that is good, because Hextia, again, sends for cost. So no matter what he responds to, he can't use both. So essentially, by getting the Silk here, this gets the Phalanx to my hand, which is actually somewhat relevant, as we'll see later. But this ensures that I don't have to deal with the Hextia as well, because resolution tactics will take something. So I decided to take the Hextia, and my opponent grabs a search off of his own Hextia. So yeah, we go ahead and send a Violent Cube away so we can get a Collapse Serpent. And the relevant thing with bouncing Phalanx is that I actually haven't normal summoned this entire time, because this was all started with Quick Launch and Nocto. So I'm like, okay, I can actually just resummon this Phalanx and do the exact same play I was going to anyways. So yeah, I have as well the Chaos Dragons now in play. I can just normal summon the Phalanx, and I know that, okay, unless my opponent has a hand trap, I am pretty much guaranteed to resolve this entire play. So Needle Fiber is going to check for that, and of course that resolves, so that is going to be very good news for me. We go ahead and grab a Wyver Burster, and then we're going to go ahead and make Pissy, which should be a striker in underneath the fiber here. For some reason, I don't know why I made Pissy here. It should be a second striker dragon. So yeah, because that plays around Ghost Ogre, for those of you guys who are unaware. Yeah, here I go ahead and grab Rotar, and I pitch the Brute Sector to go for a Levianeer, because at this point, like, I still have to deal, like, no matter which card I took with the Tactics Talent, I have to still deal with the other card without a battle phase. So I'm gonna have to pop his cards. So we go into Protector Whelp, then go Pisty, and then go bring back the Tracer, and then we make Delindrus, and then make a Seal. There's other ways to do this, like, you don't have to play Delindrus, especially if you like do the play with LB Striker first. And especially, like, even doubly so if you have other Rockets in grave. But that's neither here nor there. We're going to go ahead and summon the Levianeer to pop the Silk, and then he's going to get back his Haunted Rock just to have an extra card. Go ahead and Chaos Space here. I draw a Dead Lightning Storm, but it's just free card. It's fine. And then we go ahead and make a Union Carrier, and then go into a copy of Savage after we pop the Hextia. So yeah, Carrier here is, again, a bit more value because he is on a Dragoon package, so he has a little bit more versatility than I normally would. But again, it's still like not like insane or anything. But yeah, I'm feeling like pretty good about this board until they reveal the droplet that they were holding on to. So that actually invalidates both the Seal and the Savage, which is unfortunate. So yeah, my opponent goes ahead and normals the Marionetter, and it turns out that they have no more targets, and you'll notice that there is no protocol anywhere. So they actually cited it out, which is pretty interesting. I'm pretty sure that's because they expected to go second. So like maybe they just wanted less Geist traps. Although at that point I feel like you would, I would personally side out Rock before siding out Protocol, definitely. But in this case, they decided to just go with siding in, or keeping in the Haunted Rock. So my opponent is swapping out with Marionetter. There was a bit of miscommunication there. Well, my opponent thought that I like had a response, but I didn't have anything. So yeah, the Meliseek was okay. And then so yeah, they choose to attack directly and then send the Savage. They could have attacked into the Seal. To which point I would have just used it and then like gotten a search off of it, and then like it would have been effectively the same, but it's not really that big of a deal. But yeah, sending Savage, and then going into a Link Rebo. They thought they had a Link Rebo engrave here in battle phase to go and like push more, but they did not. That was I believe the first game that they had Link Rebo. So I go ahead and get a search for the Faker. And at this point, okay, so I have to play through what we know is probably going to be, well, it's definitely going to be another Silk and then a Manifestation as well. Right, so we got Seal in the end phase. I go ahead and activate it just to trigger its graveyard effect, because you can't tribute it during your own turn. So yeah, this was actually the right card to get here. That was safer. And then I go back, and then I'm like, nah, I want to grab a Black Metal Dragon instead, which was actually worse, which you'll see in a sec. So we draw another Lightning Storm, which is not ideal at all in this case. But our opponent decides to Manifestation in standby phase to bring back the copy of Hextia, then trigger Faker, and then grab Silk. So I'm like, okay, the Spell Trap Negate's not really that big of a deal for me, because, you know, I have not really anything of value besides Reborn, and like Reborn is actually not essential at this point because I still actually have the second Striker Dragon. So here's where it actually where it actually does come in handy is the second Striker Dragon, because I did need to link away stuff. Like I could have used Carrier, but there's not actually any Link 3s in this extra deck, because the only cards I have left in my extra deck are Boro Sword, Metal Marcher, Herald, and the second Striker Dragon. So yeah, that's probably why some people are opting to play 3, is because like in the cases where they make 2 for the initial combo, they want to have the third as follow-up, whereas like I try and do like 1, or like what I was doing in this particular build, or like my particular combo sequencing was using 1 and then using the second as follow-up. But anyways, we go ahead and go to main phase, and I actually use Union Carrier to target the Black Metal Dragon to equip Absa Router. That way just get another free search, because I don't have any normal summons in my hand. This would have been perfect if I had Safer. So the real important thing here is to get Levianeer to try and just like force my way through the board, because like as you'll see here, I'm gonna play a bunch and then realize there's nothing that I'm doing that's going to force Silk, because like nothing is threatening his board at all. So see, that's gonna be like a persistent theme. So I like make Striker, I grab double searches off like Tracer, and I grab a Remedy, and then you know I do all these things. Like I use like Striker to grab back Recharger, and then I use Recharger's effect, and then I grab back another guy. Like I grab Brotar, and then I use Brotar, and then I grab Nocto. Like all this is cool, but it doesn't actually answer any of the board. Whereas if I had just used Striker, or sorry, Safer to grab back Levianeer, then it would have like forced the issue instantly. So there's not really a good reason to why I did any of what I did. I was just like fiddling with cards essentially at this point. So I can make a sword, which I'm like, okay, that's gonna force the Silk, but like I just used so many resources. Like I blew so much that it was not worth it at all. Like my opponent is not really going to die. So yeah, I just kind of like threw cards around for no reason. So yeah, my opponent was obviously just gonna use a sword, or bounce a sword rather. And then we go ahead. We are able to clear the rest of the board, which is fine, because I still have a target for a Tracer. Or actually, yeah, I have a target for Tracer, and I still have a Delindrus, right? Because I didn't use Delindrus the previous turn, so we can walk over the Hextia. But yeah, you can see like I didn't accomplish anything, because like what am I realistically making? I don't have like the only negate left in my extra deck is Herald, and there's absolutely no way I can get to it. So at this point, I'm basically just playing Dragon Beatdown. And my opponent gets another search off the Hextia as well. So like they're set up again for the next turn. Now the good news for us is that both of their Silks are engraved, and they don't have Protocol. If my opponent had Protocol access this whole time, probably would have been game over. But luckily for us, our misplay of grabbing Black Metal Dragon was not consequential. Yes, Safer was obviously the better card to get off the seal. I was just not thinking there. So that is the lesson for everyone today. Is think a little bit like about what you're gonna try and do in your own turn, like when you're summoning stuff off seal and that kind of game state. So opponent goes ahead and uses a Marionetter, and then does the swap. And then when they declare that they're swapping for Silk, I'm like, okay, that's actually fine. Because at that point, I could just negate the Silk on my turn and not have to worry about like his turn. But then he does something unexpected. He goes ahead and actually crashes the Silk, which is something I didn't really think about because they're trying to loop Manifestation. So like that was a pretty heads-up play there that I did not really consider. So we had to basically deal with like essentially the same setup, just a little bit better for us because like they're not summoning a Silk from the deck off this Faker. So that means that like this Manifestation is probably going to have to get back Silk, and then this Faker is going to summon like maybe a Meliseek, or like maybe like they'll hold it for a later point, like hold the Manifestation for a later point so they can summon like Konkiri off of the Faker. But I know that like there's only so many options left in the Geist lineup, and I know that like both Hexia and Silk can't be live during this turn. So we draw a Dragon Shrine, which is again another pretty dead card at this point because we already used Router. So I'm like, okay, we can go ahead and banish for Red MD, and then we just try and get as much damage here as possible. Actually, the Dragon Shrine isn't dead because I could send Sacred again, but I just didn't. Again, like this whole time, I'm just like not really thinking like if I just drop Levianeer, like it's effectively game. But here I'm just like, okay, just summon all the monsters and like just try and force through damage. Right, so I go battle phase, I attack with Tracer, he takes the attack. I attack with Delindris, he takes the attack. I attack with the Red MD, and he takes that attack as well. So I attack with Savage. Or no, I don't attack with Savage yet. He says after that attack, goes Manifestation to bring back the Meliseek, of all things, and then activates Faker and Resolution, and then Resolution drop a Linkuriboh. So he's just trying to get bodies on the board, right? Without like putting something in a tap position to die to like one of these cards. Like it would have probably worked if he had just gone Silk, like revive Silk off Manifestation, and then go like Faker, summon like Konkiri. Like that probably would have been fine. Because it could have bounced the Manifestation, and then that would put the Silk back in grave, so he doesn't have anything in a tap position. But yeah, choosing to go for Linkuriboh instead. So I'm like thinking, okay, so he grabs the search off of the Meliseek. And then he says he doesn't have any targets left, so that means he doesn't have Konkiris left either. So this is a pretty interesting. It's probably setting out Konkiri, thinking he was going second, I guess. So yeah, I go ahead and use Imperm on the Linkuriboh, because it activates on the field. So even though it tributes for cost, like it activated like while it was negated. Because the Imperm successfully resolved. So I'm like, okay, perfect. So even if he goes ahead and tributes it off here, my Savage will still be on full attack. So I can go ahead and attack in a Faker, and then attack for Levianeer. And my opponent thought that I like misplayed with like my redeclares, but I attacked with the same monster. So that was a very, very messy game. It could have been a lot cleaner if I had just summoned Safer off of the Seal. That was like the big misplay, but there was like a bunch of other things in there that I could have sequenced better for sure. So that was a very, very long game 2. Alright, so game 3, I don't believe was quite as long. Yeah, it was definitely not as long. Now I remember how this game went. Alright, so opponent is interestingly playing triple tactics talents. I don't really know how often he's been getting hand trapped to like make him want to play this. But I guess he's like really insistent on it. Like I think the only hand traps that really work turn 1 against this deck are Ash and Gamma. That would turn on tactics. So I don't know. Like Gamma is good against Geist, but like I'm not sure if I would prioritize Gamma over just generic back routes. But yeah, going Meliseek and then searching a copy of Faker, and then setting 4. It turns out actually, basically this is setting. It's not really actually a lot of disruptive pieces. Because the Son of Rock is dead, this Tactics Talent is dead. The Pointer can get something out of my hand, but like it won't get like it won't be able to stop my combo or stop the Lightning Storm itself. And then Manifestation, like it will be enough to grab Silk, but that's you know, obviously not going to be enough given how good this hand is, especially when I draw this. So I drew Divine Lance, but that's like probably the you know, the least brick of the Divine Lance package. Like with Violent Cube and stuff. Like this is like one of the okay ones to draw because you just search for Veen and get like value that way. But yeah, shotgunning Pointer in the standby phase, and then he sees our hand and is like, oh, that's a pretty good hand. So taking the Lightning Storm out of her hand. So it makes me think, okay, maybe his back row is real, but I'm just gonna play and see exactly how far we can get, because like he has full knowledge of her hand, so there's not really any use trying to like, you know, play mind games because he just knows. So I'm just gonna like try and force my way through as many disruptions as I like physically can. So he goes ahead and uses manifestation, and then interestingly bounces the normal summon, which I thought was kind of strange because he knew that I had Shrine plus Word Legacy Guard Dragon, so I was always going to be able to come back from it. Plus I have Talons as well now that he activated Silk, so at any point I could just like, you know, get more value. So yeah, I go ahead and bring back Black Metal Dragon that I dump off Shrine, and then, you know, his other two back row actually just don't do anything. So yeah, he is going to end up conceding pretty soon actually. Yeah, we're just gonna go ahead and play it out here. I summon the Savior from my hand, that's like a small thing, just so I get an extra monster in terms of like the baby dragons, the Chaos Dragons. But yeah, he will scoop pretty soon. Yeah, right about here. Yeah, so he shows us his back row and then ends up conceding. So, you know, the game 3 kind of played itself because his hand was pretty weak, but that game 2 was like where the majority of the gameplay happened, as far as like the misplays and like things that could have been done more optimally. So there's a lot to unpack in that game. Yeah, my commentary kind of it wasn't very good. I realized this like as I was commentating. I was like, my commentary is not very good, so I do apologize for that. But if you have anything that you would like to provide input on as far as plays that could have been improved upon, definitely let me know, because I feel like that's a good game to kind of like sit down and unpack. So I already pointed out a couple of things that I feel like I could have optimized, but if there are any other suggestions or things that I did not point out, be sure to let me know. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like as well as any thoughts or feedback in the comment section down below. Feel free to subscribe for more informative and competitive Yu-Gi-Oh content. If you want to, you can follow me on Discord, Twitter, or Twitch. All three links in the description box down below as always. And once again, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I'll catch you in the next video. See you guys!